Fantastic, old-fashioned stuff.
We noticed when we came over here, and it was spotting with rain.
Yes, absolutely.
So to put it away, this fabulous map, which I looked at for quite a while, and I must say I was scratching my head because I thought, if this is Britain, I don't quite recognise what's going on over here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about why this map is not really perhaps as pictorially representative as it might be?
So, in defence of the map, I will say that this is a replica of a 2nd century AD Roman original.
Yep.
And with the exception of Scotland being kinked off to the right,
yes,
and incredibly long, and Cornwall down there being also incredibly long,
yes,
they haven't done a bad job in general of getting the rough geography right. The north of England is generally in the right shape, Wales is generally in the right shape, but at first when you look at it, particularly if you weren't that familiar with what Britain looked like, you would maybe think it was just a weird blob of sorts. It's
and you wouldn't be that interested, because a southern Roman down here, you wouldn't care that much.
No, exactly.
Anyway,
and as we know, the Romans, whilst they did go into Scotland, they went all the way up to the top of Scotland.
Yeah.
They didn't really stay permanently.
No.
So whilst we've got the names of some of the towns, and we recognise the names of some of the tribes, so the towns are in brown here, and the tribes are written in green.
Yep.
Whilst we've got those written down, note the amount of detail we have in England instead.
It does, it does. There's much more concentration. So here we are then in the north. Here's Eboracum, which is obviously where we are here. The Brigantes, of course, were the tribe that controlled this. Queen Cartamundra, of course, brought the Romans up in the first. They were down at Lincoln, weren't they? Which should be down.
Just down that way there, yeah.
There, yep. So, but it looks like a very, very developed part of the empire.
It is. So Eboracum was, for a long time, one of the most important settlements, not just in the north of England for the Romans, but in all of England for the Romans. So as we all know, it was originally started as a military base, but it became the control centre for this entire section of the UK. And it was treated as the headquarters of many of the emperors when they came to England. One of the most famous being Emperor Constantine, known as Constantine the Great, who was crowned emperor here. And that was where his campaign to take over the rulership of the entire Roman Empire.
And his father died here, hadn't he?
He did indeed, exactly right. Yes. So that's. It's one of the main things for the later period, so obviously we're doing later period Romans here today ourselves, but for the later period, one of the most important people in our timeline started his entire career in this town here.
So I mean, it really shows, doesn't it, the importance with which, you know, they held Eboracum, that not only the emperor, but the emperor's son would be here.
Absolutely,
and that he could be proclaimed emperor. I know it was disputed by others,
of course,
but nonetheless.
But it was still treated as legitimate at the time.
Exactly.
Yes.
It wasn't kind of challenged. I mean, that really shows, doesn't it, that it really was right at the top of the pile
for sure,
in terms of cities of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, it was big. It was very big. Well, sorry, not physically big. It was relatively small compared to something like Rome itself, for example, or what then became Constantinople later down the line. But it was very big in importance for the Romans. Yeah.
And of course, so much of that comes down to, doesn't it, this geography that just links us so easily to the continent for trade and for...
Absolutely. One thing that you'll find interesting as well, though, about this general northern area is, so whilst Eboracum has, as the map will point out, Legio Sextae Victrix, so the 6th Legion Victrix stationed here, we have a staggering number of red names which indicate military positions all the way across this northern area of England. Not to mention, of course, Hadrian's Wall at the bottom there. You can see the cutout of Hadrian's Wall.
So we've got the different forts along the way there.
But all the different forts along the way in order, including which units were stationed there permanently.
So, all right, I've got Vindelander. Where's Vindelander?
Vindelander should be down there in the middle. Back from the main line.
So if you ever get a chance to visit this fantastic museum up there on Hadrian's Wall,
Vindelander is one of the top places to go and see, actually, in all of Roman archaeology. But the thing that I would say I find most interesting about this general sphere is that so we've got a huge amount of military presence here, and going all the way down the west and the east and southeast coast. So I'll just quickly pull out this other thing that I showed you earlier as well.
Yes, do.
If you don't mind. This is
incredible, by the way, you're about to see.
This is how we know which units were actually stationed in which parts of the UK, well, in the entire empire. So this is a document called the Notitia Dignitatum, or
Notitia Dignitatum, so a list of the important folk, as you
exactly,
might say.
And that includes military personnel as well. So if we keep going down the scroll, this whole thing's 15 metres long in total.
15 metres on papyrus, I understand.
On papyrus, yes, exactly. You can see here on the right-hand side, I'm starting to get into military unit insignia. So it tells us under which command which units were placed, which also tells us where they were placed.
So if we look at these shields over here, for instance,
you can
that would
see
tally up on there.
Our top one there. The
So we've got
Joviani Seniores, the blue background with the red eagle, you can see them over there.
Yeah.
And if we went further in the scroll, you'd be able to see the one on the background, the green one with the white dragons, the Equites Brachiate Seniores, who are a cavalry regiment. But the reason this is important in a way is that not only can you see the huge amount of names all the way across here, but the Roman army of the time had several different types of armed force, effectively. They had border guards who were stationed permanently around the forts on the borders, so along Hadrian's Wall, along the German frontier, etc. The next grade up was what they called comitatenses. Comitatus meaning a field army. The comitatenses were members of the field army. And they operated in a single diocese. So, for example, Germania or Gaul. And their job was to move around that particular diocese and take out any threat that got through the border guards. Now, only one province, or diocese, in the entirety of the Roman Empire, or the western half at least, has 2 comitatus in it, and that is Britain.
Wow.
One is under the command of the Comes Britannia, or the military count of Britain, and one of the Comes Litanorum Saxonici, if I've got the name correct.
Okay.
The count of the Saxon shore forts, who was down here in the bottom east of the country, stationed there just to protect against any invasions by
incursions
Saxons
coming across the sea.
Exactly. But again, Britain, only place that's got 2 military counts at the same time. And yet, ironically, no fabricae, which were the workshops which constructed military equipment and sent it out to the soldiers.
Can we ask about
Yes.
where was the original of this found? I mean, how
So
do
the original
we,
of it, now, this is an unfortunate one. So you'll notice that, as we discussed before, this is in a scroll format. The only copies we've got extant are medieval versions. So they were copied by medieval monks, and they all did it in book format.
Right.
The only reason we've done it as a scroll is the chap who actually made this, which sadly is not myself. I don't quite have the skill to do it yet, although I am practicing. We had a conversation about the way it's actually laid out. So if you look at the actual layout of this, it looks right as a scroll. When they have copied it in the medieval period, they've done it as a codex or a book. And it doesn't actually line up correctly.
No.
So wherever they've got it from, wherever they got the original from, we think it must have been a scroll. And unfortunately, scrolls survive even less than codexes. So the original has been sadly lost to time somewhere. But the chap who's done this, a bloke called Nicholas Gearing, wonderful, wonderful man, very kind, very helpful. Spent a long time doing
labour of love,
isn't
it?
On this, and what he's had to work off are 5 different extant versions from the medieval period, and the Roman one, sadly, having been lost.
And what was that, the British Museum? Where is that held then?
The most famous one is actually in Paris.
Right.
Or it was at least copied in Paris. I'm not sure if the actual current copy still exists there. So the Paris manuscript is the most commonly used one, because it seems to have the most correct elements shared by all of them, if that makes sense. So it's when you've got 5 copies of something that's such a complicated piece of documentation, the best way to get the most accurate version is to try and cross-reference all of them and see where it lines up the closest.
Like they do with the old version of the Bible, isn't it? To try and get the definitive version. They look at
Yes.
lots of different, or the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It's the same idea, isn't it? Look at
Exactly
all
so.
the different versions, and then you can find
Yes.
where likely be mistakes that have been transcribed and so forth, and which bits are in common. So
Exactly so. So that's what we've done with the Paris version of that one.
Yep.
So as I said, the original map of this is 2nd century.
Yep.
But because we've got the information about all these military deployments from the 4th, 5th century, Nicholas has kindly added those to the map as well.
So just remember, just before we let you go again, so we've got the names of the Roman settlements here in the sort of the brown.
In the brown, yep.
We've got the tribal areas in green. And then we've got the military deployments in red, haven't we? So
and then riverways, waterways, and inlets, etc., are all in the blue there as well as the oceans in slightly lighter blue.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. If I could just grab that microphone back.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to turn the screen around. Everybody's just going to give you a little thumbs up and a thank you from Waterloo, Ontario. There you can see.
Oh, brilliant.
Down in
Thank you very
Eastbourne, Sussex by the Sea, Canberra in Australia. So we're chatting to folk all over the world.
That's brilliant. I mean, if they want to hang around for another 3 hours, I've got plenty of military equipment to talk about.
We may well come back, but for now, I want to talk to this very, very fine gentleman next to me.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for watching.